I'm quite calm tonight.
Good. Well, as I said, good evening, folks. Thanks for coming out. Hope you are all having a good week, basically. So tonight we are joined by this young gentleman, a good friend of ours. He's been on the show quite a few times. He's been on for a while. He runs Set of the Dead tours in Edinburgh. He's been on TV, magazines, documentaries, podcasts.
OnlyFans.
Fucking OnlyFans. Keep it that. I told you not to say nothing about that. And
sorry, OnlyFans. Yeah.
Right, listen, you still try to plug your OnlyFans on here. We respect him, you know what I mean? But he's the world's leading expert on Sir George Mackenzie, Greyfriars, Covenanters, anything to do with Edinburgh, basically. This is a guy that knows what he's talking about. Jamie Christoffel. So, again, good evening, young sir. There's my wife in saying hello.
Evening. Absolutely. Well, let's get. I mean, I don't know very much about things, but you know, when it comes to certainly Greyfriars and the vaults, you know, pretty much around about the 1750s onwards in the Old Town. Yeah, I mean, I know my stuff. I mean, it's my job to know my. There's a ghost just walked past your fucking back.
I know. You want to say hello to you, girl, quickly? She's a big fan of yours, Jamie.
She is indeed. I've not seen her for a while.
Right, hiya. Quickly say hello before we get started.
It's Annie herself. Don't start singing tomorrow. Hiya.
Hello.
Hello. I've not seen you for a while. About a year, is it not? You're full of the chat tonight. Yeah, we are. No. See ya.
When I tell her you were coming on, she's like, "Oh, Jamie." I'm surprised you got a poster on the wall of you. Anyway, continue.
No, I mean, certainly about the two things, Greyfriars and the vaults is certainly my area. I mean, about the New Town and that, I'm a bit sketchy about the New Town and other things in Edinburgh, like Holyrood and all that. But, you know, certainly for the vaults, purely because, you know, it is my daily work. I mean, it's my full-time job, running City of the Dead tours. That's where we do our tours. You know, and my office is in Greyfriars. So, you know, if I didn't know about the locations that we did tours in, I'd be pretty crap at my job. You know what I mean? So I think that's what a lot of people don't get, especially online, like we were talking about before we went live. Is a lot of people who are used to talking to people who do this as a hobby. You know, it's just a weekend thing. But what people don't realise is why I get so uppity about it is my daily life. It's my job. So when people are spreading misinformation about particularly things that my job involves and my job relies on, of course I'm going to get uppity about it. But people then see it as just like, I'm either that guy that has to know better than everybody. When it comes to the vaults and obviously Greyfriars and George Mackenzie, then yeah, I do, because it's my job. And if I didn't, then I'd be pretty shit at my job. You know what I mean? So yes, I do know more than people who have just heard about the case the last year or done a wee bit of web search or something research, you know. I've been, you know, City of the Dead, I started having contact with 2007. And so that's 19 years ago when I first started with Charlotte to set up the St Andrews tours with City of the Dead. And then from then I started working in Edinburgh around 2009 with City of the Dead. And since then, you know, I got the manager's job in 2018. And then Jan moved to Australia. So I got full control of the company. Jan still owns it, but I deal with the daily running of the company, which, you know, we've got all the guides, 20 plus. So it is my daily job, and it does affect my daily job when people are, you know, spreading this misinformation online. And, you know, and it does affect my daily job when I'm getting threats and emails about, you know, trading standards because false advertising, because they never got to go into the Black Mausoleum, as they say it. That's because the Mackenzie Mausoleum isn't the Black Mausoleum. It never has been. But people spread this misinformation online. And of course, they're right. The people who brought the whole story and the whole haunting to the public, obviously we're wrong. I need to go research because I'm wrong, because they've read on a website that that's the Black Mausoleum or they've seen it in a reel. And, you know, it's a daily challenge for me. So I do get uppity and I do get arsey with people because I do know better than them at the end of the day. And I'm not being big-headed, but it's my job to know more than them, you know. And
Guys,
you know, over 14 years of research says I know better than them, you know. And so yeah, it does upset me greatly.
I mean, we've known you for a long time, and we've had you on the show quite a few times, and you know, we've met you in person. I don't know many times. I think the last time we saw you in person was at your house, but. And you're not one of these ego guys, you know. You're not one of these. Look at me, I know better than you. As you say, you've been doing it for 19 years, basically, 7 days a week, you know. And I mean, I'm not blowing smoke up your backside, but I mean, your knowledge is far superior to anybody that we've ever come across, you know. And I know, I mean, we've been in Greyfriars, I don't know, dozens of times. And it is a place that you do grow quite passionate about, you know, even if just visiting, you know, but obviously you work there, it's your baby kind of thing. Yeah. And I've noticed in the last couple of months that there's these overnight experts that are all coming on Facebook and, you know, TikTok as well. TikTok seems to be getting quite bad for it. And the first thing that they say is the Black Mausoleum, and they show you a picture of the tomb. Yeah. I've commented on a few of them, and a couple of times I've been shot down, you know, but obviously it's as you say, it's your daily job. You know, you breathe it day in, day out kind of thing. And when you disagree with people, some of them, you'll get that small percentage that will say, right, okay, I got it wrong. You know, I appreciate what you're saying, so now I know the truth. But then you get that other big percentage that just say you're talking a load of bull.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they just don't. They're just like, oh, you need to go research, which is like, you know, like a red flag to a bull to me. When they tell me, you know, this person who's just heard about this case literally 2 hours ago are telling me to go research because they've seen 2 reels now that says it's the Black Mausoleum. And, you know, it's like people who do these reels, they just basically look online. They don't do any hard research. You know, there is something, I mean, I think even Wikipedia has got it right. They say the Black Mausoleum is a different mausoleum because it is. You know, the misinformation comes from people who don't have access to the Covenanters prison in Greyfriars and the real Black Mausoleum that will stand outside the Mackenzie Mausoleum and say, this is the Black Mausoleum. This is the one where people have been attacked inside. It's impossible because the public have never had access to the Mackenzie Mausoleum unless they've broken in, i.e. the homeless guy in 1998 and then Sonny Devlin in 2003, the famous one where he cut the head of a corpse off and was kicking it about the graveyard. They both broke into the tomb via the back. The public, it's only 8 foot by 8 foot inside that mausoleum. So how you've got groups of people in there to stand there, like 30 odd, 40 people, no wonder they were passing out. You know, you would be absolutely, literally crushed. You could not breathe. It's 8 by 8. It's never been the Black Mausoleum. Nobody, certainly not the public, has ever had access to it. But again, when these people are claiming, oh yes, tour people have been attacked inside it, then the council, who we've got the contract with for the Covenanters prison, they're looking at it going, well, are they taking people into that mausoleum? You know, which would be highly illegal for us to do, and it would be against our license and contract with the council who own it. So again, it's affecting my daily life and my, you know, the business that I am manager of. Again, why I get so upset about it.
Because it can go down the legal side of it, and at the end of the day, it could get you shut down.
Yeah, absolutely, because they just, you know, absolutely. Although I get threats daily because, you know, we advertised the Black Mausoleum and they never got to go in it. We did just walk past it, so it's false advertising. And it's like, well, I'll tell you what, see when you see anywhere on our advertising where we tell you, you go into the Mackenzie Mausoleum, then get back to me and I'll give you free tours for life because we're wrong by saying that because we don't. But the tomb that you got taken into on the Graveyard Tour or the Double Dead Tour, that is the Black Mausoleum. It is the only Black Mausoleum. It is the original Black Mausoleum where we've been documenting since 1999, where over 3,500 people have been interacted with within that Black Mausoleum, within the Covenanters prison area, over the last almost, 28 years now, since 1999. So I think we know what we're talking about. Yeah.
I mean, there's Laura saying hello as well. Evening, dear.
Hi, Laura.
Craig, got a question for you, James. You met Craig. Craig's Laura's other half.
Yeah, of course so. Yeah.
Do you think Jeremy Greg's naming the poltergeist after the Mackenzie Mausoleum, thus creating the confusion?
Yeah, I think it does. Because the whole reason it came about, why he called it the Mackenzie Poltergeist, it was for his book, The Ghost That Haunted Itself. He couldn't think of a name for it that was apt enough. But again, he never thought back then, it would possibly be like it is now. This was back in 2000. The book was released in 2001. So, that was like 2 years of research went into it, and he needed to call it something. Even the press didn't have a name for it back then when it was in the headlines after Colin Grant, died after trying an exorcism. It was just called, the haunting in Greyfriars, or the ghost in Greyfriars, or, nobody even mentioned poltergeist. They still weren't sure of what it was. It was just an energy or dark spirit. It was referenced as a dark spirit. So Jan had to call it something in the book. And that's why he opted for the Mackenzie Poltergeist, because he still believes that the homeless man breaking in 1998 was the start. It was the trigger point, because literally a week later, that is when strange occurrences started to be recorded in the prison area, 200 yards away around this one mausoleum. It was fine before the homeless guy, went into the Mackenzie mausoleum. And he didn't call it after any Mackenzie. He called it after the mausoleum. Yeah, I think he probably does. Regret it now, probably.
See, I know that all the attacks are taking place in the Covenanters, which I'll come to, but you've got the Mackenzie Poltergeist. I no doubt you're sick of hearing it as well. The amount of teams that have been in, I know investigations and that are banned now, that have been for quite some time. But the amount of teams that we've watched, on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, and they'll go in and they'll say, "Oh, I was attacked by the Mackenzie Poltergeist. The Mackenzie Poltergeist tried to strangle me, tried to scratch me, and all the rest of it." And that annoys me. We're only a paranormal team, we're nothing special, but that annoys me when you think, no, it never, he didn't. But they say, "Oh, we've got 100% evidence that it was George Mackenzie, the tyrant." Bloody Mackenzie.
The tyrant, the dictator, and the misogynist torturer, the rest of it.
That's another thing, I want you to put to. I know we know the true story, the real story, basically. But that's another thing I want you to put to bed tonight, because everybody thinks that. And I'll put my hands up. When Sarah and I first started PIH way back, we read some stories, though he was a bad man, blah blah. But after speaking to you and finding out the truth, we know we were totally wrong. But I'm going back 6 years.
More than that, I think.
Back then. But I can say, after spending time with yourself and what have you, we realised we were totally wrong.
It's easy to do that. Because there is, just about everywhere you look, unfortunately, is about the bad man, George Mackenzie. Again, it's just lack of research. His autobiography, his biography is out there. His court records and all his papers are still available through archive, which is easily got hold of. The information is all there if you just put the effort into researching it properly, which is something that I enjoy doing. And I don't mean web searching. I mean proper research, archives, books from the period. Learn about the man. Look at his court records. Look at his. You can build up an impression of the man from his court records alone. His writings. People like to believe what they hear. If they read it on maybe 3-4 websites, then it must be true. But they 3-4 websites have got it off somebody who's sharing false information. So, you've got primary source material still available, and it's easy if people just put the effort. But nobody can be bothered sitting in archives anymore. Well, some people can, because that's their job, like historians and things like that, who know how to do it. But the general public, who just have an interest in this poltergeist, I'll just look at a couple of websites, and if they read the same thing, then that's it, it's truth. He was a bad man. Nowhere does it mention, well, there's a few, how he's a misogynistic torturer, and he tortured the Covenanters. Show me how he did. He never tortured any of them. He abolished witch trials in Scotland because he was against the use of torture in confessions. And the other bullshit story is because, that's why George Mackenzie was buried in Greyfriars, to wind up the spirits of the people who he kept in the Covenanters prison. Again, utter bullshit. George Mackenzie only signed the paperwork to allow the people to be kept there. It was the King's troops, the government troops, who were keeping them there, not him. He was in London. He never visited them. He wasn't even in Scotland when they were kept there. So how he was up here killing women and children, again, these men came from a battlefield, the Battle of Bothwell Brig in 1679. So why there was women and children there, no idea, because they were marched from the battle. It was all men, 1,200 men. This is all documented. And George Mackenzie was not in Scotland. Yet people will tell you that he was there stabbing them and torturing them. And the reason he is buried there is because he was a Scottish presbytery. He was a Covenanter himself. That's why he wanted to be buried in Greyfriars. That mausoleum was built for him in 1687. He died in 1691, purely because the church that we see today wasn't the same size as it is now. It was the other side of it. That side of the church, New Greyfriars, didn't exist. So you got a perfect view over Edinburgh. Again, his biography tells you this, but nobody's willing to look at it. It's all there. That's why he's there. You know, when he was a judge, okay, he was Lord Advocate of Scotland. He was not about to spend his entire life in law to turn around to the king and say, I don't believe in what you're doing. You're wrong. Stop persecuting these people. Because he'd be executed and somebody else would come along and do the job. He was looking after himself. People say, well, he could have lied. You know, there was one American I was arguing with who said, well, he could have just said no. Mate, are you shitting me? This is 1600 Scotland. You're going to say to the king, no, they are not traitors. When the king has said, you're either with me or against me. If you're against me, it's high treason. The only punishment for high treason is hung, drawn, and quartered. Death. If you were about to, he could sit in court being a judge after these people were found guilty, whether we like it or not, in the eyes of the law at the time that George Mackenzie wrote because he had to, they were breaking the law. They were high treason. You were against the king. So if he had shown them leniency, like giving them $200 community service, the king was like, why are you showing them leniency? You know what I mean? And he would be executed. He didn't work his entire life in law to turn around and say, no, I'm not doing what you told me. No, I refuse. I'm going to speak to HR. You know what I mean? He wasn't stupid, but he was in a position where he had to do what he had to do. He didn't find them guilty. They were already found guilty in a court of law. Again, this is what people don't understand. He persecuted. No, he didn't. These people were found guilty, unfortunately, in a court of law. Okay? He didn't find them guilty. He just had to pass sentence as a judge, as today's judges do. They pass sentence. They don't find them guilty that's the court that finds them guilty or not guilty. So it's exactly the same. But no, people think he was the jury, hangman, judge, everything, and it's not the case. He had to do what he had to do. And as sorry as that sounds, maybe it was selfish, but he was looking after his own head. Back then, you had to. Or you were executed. No. End off.
It wasn't I'll get comments I'll stick up in 2 wee seconds. It wasn't selfish. As you say, you know, he might have been the top judge in Scotland, but at the end of the day, everybody answered to the king. You know,
exactly.
And whatever the king ordered, you know, that's what was done, regardless of your religious beliefs or whatever. Because you know, as you say, Jamie, if he turns around and basically says no, or you know, Your Majesty, I don't agree with what you're doing, then he would have been off to the scaffold, and there's a good chance his family would either have went to the scaffold with them, or
absolutely
they would have been kicked out in the street.
I mean, he was Lord Advocate of Scotland. He worked his entire life in law, and the fact is, he stood up in a court of law and stood up for a woman who he didn't know. He could have been found guilty of witchcraft. All it would take is somebody in that courtroom to stand up and say he's been overtaken by the devil, to stand up and defend this witch. But because he was highly respected at the time, nobody did, because they actually trusted him, because he was a highly respected lawyer. And that was the start of the abolition of witch trials in Scotland, because he was against the use of torture in confession. That's it. So this whole bullshit, he tortured them, it's utter garbage. And he wasn't called Bloody Mackenzie until 100 odd years after he died, because nobody would call him that when they were alive, because he was highly respected. So this Bloody Mackenzie came after. Yeah. And one last thing about George. One last thing, actually, before we go, just to finish that off. When he retired in 1683, he spent the last remaining years of his life and his own money going around Scotland getting supposed Covenanters out of their holding cells because they were being held illegally. And he'd done that off his own back. He wasn't asked to do it. He chose to get these Covenanters out of holding cells. So that tells you.
That goes to show the measure the man as well. you know.
Absolutely.
And people just, as I say, when we first started out, we believed the stories, Bloody Mackenzie, bad man, etc. But as I say, after spending time with yourself, then you realise that we got it wrong. And just before I stick the comments up, I think this is what more people have to do. As you say, nobody researches, nobody, will read actual books. So go online, read a couple of websites, say, right, well, that's the truth. Because that's exactly what we did, 6 years ago. And, but as I say, I have to spend time with you and reading up on it, etc., right, we're wrong. And I think more people need to do that these days, especially in the fact that, they might not all be online, but the facts are.
To be fair, I used to be the same. I was the same for a long time until, Charlotte. There is only one person that knows more about Greyfriars than I do, and that was my, that was my wife, Charlotte. And it was Charlotte that she was the one that told me to research properly, because I was always one for, just maybe doing a wee quick research, because I was never into history until, and she's also a death historian. So, so it was her that told me to do proper research and show me how to do proper research in archives and proper books and stuff. And it's like she said, the information's always there. It's always there. Everything's documented, especially about somebody like George Mackenzie, because he was such a popular figure, such an important figure in Scotland's history. So there's always information about him. You've just got to know where to look and not trust these later. It's all the stuff you want to look at is all like early 1700s, because that's the true stuff you're going to get, rather than the 1900s, where the embellishments come into it. Everybody needs a baddie in the romanticism novel, so that's when he gets the Bloody Mackenzie. And of course, he made the laws in Scotland, so he was a bad man. The contempt for authority, and he was the one that made them. So of course, he's a bad man. He's the authority that people didn't like. And so it's a shame he gets such a bad reputation, and he really wasn't.
I'll come back to I'll put these comments up, and do people not educate themselves these days? I mean, there's books, there's something amazing called the internet. Are they living in a realm? I'm not. Annabelle,
absolutely.
C6S says, I was a tour guide in Edinburgh, and I would take people around Greyfriars. The most common experience was running footsteps. It was always the same pace, weight, and speed. Have you experienced it?
There has been. Again, nowadays in Greyfriars, it's pretty busy. When I first started in Greyfriars, it was a lot quieter. A lot less tours. Now I believe there's over 240 odd tour guides, tour groups. Going from the registration numbers, because all tour guides in Greyfriars need registered now and licensed. So going by that number, but yeah, it's difficult to get any quiet time. Very rarely, unfortunately, am I there at late at night now. I used to spend time there at night, especially around Halloween, where I'd leave about 1:30 in the morning and stuff. But I'm very rarely there at night. But yeah, certainly there has been the odd report of people's hair being pulled, and they've sort of heard shuffling on the stones and stuff when there's nobody been there. So yeah, it's not a common occurrence, but again, we kind of try and stay away from things in the main graveyards, because that's not what we document. We've always documented the things around the Black Mausoleum in the prison area. So anything that happens in the prison area, we'll certainly take it down and we'll document it if necessary, or but certainly not in the main graveyard, because unfortunately there's a lot of people like to embellish, like the whole, I was attacked beside the Black Mausoleum and it's the Mackenzie Mausoleum. It's nothing to do with the Black Mausoleum at all. So yeah.
So Mackenzie never even set foot in the prison. Why would he want to spend time haunting a place that probably didn't mean a lot to him?
Absolutely.
And Greyfriars itself, it's beautiful. See, we've been there, I don't know, dozens of times. 200 plus tour guides, obviously for different tour companies. And we've done one of the tours, but we've not done any of your tours yet, which I'm ashamed to admit, but we did one. We will get around to it eventually. But we don't need to do your tours, Jamie, because you have taught us so much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. Usually walking about with me and stuff, then you don't really need to,
That's it. You don't need to. We did a tour guide, or Sarah and I did it, I don't know, a few years back for Sarah's birthday. It was a tour of the Blair. Well, it was meant to be the Blair Street Vaults, but they took us round, I don't know, about 10 different locations first, and then we go about 15 minutes in the vaults. And it was just all rehearsed. You could tell that, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything against tour guides. They do a great job, but it's all kind of rehearsed, you know, they're kind of reading for a script somewhere. Do you think having that many tour guides, and then you get these monkeys on Facebook that are writing these stories, maybe these people have been on the tours and they're taking snippets and just putting it all together?
Yeah, I mean, some of it does come from that. I mean, a lot of the people do repeat just what they've read online. But yeah, I mean, there is unfortunately tour guides out there who do say that the Mackenzie Mausoleum is the Black Mausoleum, again, because they don't have access to the proper Black Mausoleum in the prison. That's why, we understand that. You know, but yeah, I mean, that's what makes City of the Dead unique, is none of our tour guides are scripted. It's all natural. We take you to our locations and we talk to you. But again, you know, knowing what can happen in a split second in the prison area or indeed in the vaults, you can't be scripted because you've got to be able to switch, you know, so quickly and take control of things. So, you know, if you're scripted, you can lose. But no, I mean, Old Reekie Tours, they've been doing it a long, long time. They're very good at what they do. Mercat Tours, you know, they're the only 5-star walking tour in Edinburgh, and they've been doing it a long, long time. One of the oldest tours in Edinburgh, and they're extremely good at what they do. You know, but that's just not. It just doesn't suit City of the Dead, you know, and their format absolutely works for them, and our format works for us. You know, we're very natural, and we just take you and we talk to you. You know, Jan's always said that is, yeah, he could write a script because, you know, he is an author, but it's more natural when it's anybody could read your story from a book, but, you know, it's to engage people in that way. You know, it's like hearing a cover song that you recognize the lyrics, but you don't know the tune. But, you know, but there is obviously that line between embellishment and truth, which, you know, we don't stand for either, because there's a lot of stuff out there that, you know, just unbelievable that you hear, and I hear in the graveyard. I'm not going to go into any names of certain people, but, you know, I've heard it, and I've heard the sort of garbage they come out with, and it's like, people are paying you for an element of truth. Yeah, it's a ghost tour, but come on, seriously. George Mackenzie was stabbing children and cutting their heads off and spiking them on the gates of Greyfriars. Are you actually shitting me? You're actually telling a group of people this?
I've not heard that one, actually.
I have to keep my mouth shut extremely tight sometimes. There's very rarely I will interrupt another tour guide from a different company unless I hear absolute bollocks coming out of their mouth, which unfortunately happens all too often. Some of the stuff I hear them telling them is unbelievable. George Mackenzie bricked up all the children in Nondrona because he was called the Baron at that time during the plague. He used to burn them all in Greyfriars and execute them in Greyfriars with his own hands. You know, and it just... And people are paying for this information. It's wrong. It's wrong. You know, it's just utter garbage, nonsense made up. There's a fine line between shock factor and utter bullshit. You know, and these are real historical people. And I just don't understand why they need to do that. A good tour guide shouldn't need to embellish to try and get somebody to be frightened. You know, that's not how it works.
And a lot, I mean, obviously you've done Edinburgh hundreds of times, and you get a lot of tourists from, you know, different countries, you know, and they'll take the tour. I've got 2 comments for Craig, I'll stick up and say, but you know, you get people from, you know, different countries, they'll come in, they'll take the tour. I've heard many of them. And so you've got this guy saying, you know, he used to cut the heads off of children, spike them and all the rest of it. These people take that in, they'll believe it, and they'll go back to their own country, tell their families and all the rest of it. You know, I heard when I was away, this guy, and you know, it just snowballs for there.
Then they make a reel about it, and then before you know it, there's 900, 1,000 people, 2,000 people seen the reel, and that's the information that they've got. Like, oh my God, that's awful. Did you know George Mackenzie used to cut the heads of children and spike them on the gate? Blah, blah, blah. Another 900 people. It's exactly how the bloody rumour of rubbing the Greyfriars Bobby statue started. One tour guide told his group of about 20 people, rub the nose for good luck. And look at it. The statue's almost absolutely fucked because people cannot stop rubbing the Bobby. Unbelievable. I'll tell you what's lucky. It's people have not caught herpes. 86% of people admit to not washing their hands after the toilet. They're coming out the toilet after touching their bits, rubbing the dog's nose for good luck, and then the next person comes along, rubs the dog's nose for good luck, thinking it's all fun and games. Oh, good luck. Then they go have a Subway or they smoke a cigarette. People's shit is on your hands and you're putting it right up to your mouth, and then they wonder why they're not well the next day. Oh, it was the food. No, it was because you were tasting people's shit off rubbing the statue. It's not lucky, it's disgusting, and it's destroying a Grade A listed monument. Stop rubbing the bobby. That's what I've got to say about
that. I'll stay a cause up a wee second, Craig. We've seen it many times, and they actually queue up to do it.
They do. They queue up to rub it.
We park across the road where the museum is usually, and you see them queued up to rub the nose in the statue. And
insane.
Seriously, you don't want to go up to them and say, "Look, don't touch it, leave it." But
that's what people don't understand is, well. The hard facts is it is criminal damage. It is a Grade A listed national monument. It's the same grading as Stirling Castle. It's the same grade as the Wallace Monument. It's the same grade as Edinburgh Castle. It's a Grade A scheduled national monument, which means it's protected by laws. It is, if you were to deface a Grade A listed monument, like go up and chip a stone off the castle or graffiti on the castle, you'd be fined for a heritage crime. You could spend up to 5 years in prison or up to £5,000 fine for defacing a Grade A listed national monument. It's criminal damage. That is what people are doing. They don't mean to do it, but causing all that damage, it is criminal damage. Why it's not enforced, I don't know. People say, well, just raise it. We've already talked about that. You can't raise it because stupid people will climb up it, fall off, and then blame the council, because that's how entitled they are. Because it's a Grade A listed national monument, it cannot be covered, it cannot be moved, it cannot be raised, it cannot be lowered, it cannot be fenced off. The red tape protecting it is stopping us protecting it. We've looked at everything. Unfortunately, it's just about education. We've put signs up to get ripped down. It's people just need to stop fucking touching it. It's that simple. And it started with word of mouth, so it has to end with word of mouth. The more people that stay online stop touching it, it's like but nobody can tell you when you ask them where they heard it from. Where did you hear this from? Well, I don't know. I just saw it. But
that's it. They don't know where they've heard it, but they can't remember where they heard it from. No. And so you say, all right, I'm in Edinburgh, I'm going to go and rub Bobby's nose.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's Craig, Lon and I did the City of Dead tour a few years ago, including Greyfriars. It was amazing. Did I go to the Black Museum? Black Mausoleum that wasn't attacked, unfortunately. It was a brilliant experience. Keep meaning to do it again when back up. The guide last time was brilliant. Annabelle's saying, I used to say to people, Bobby's statue, it said that rubbing your nose brings you luck. It doesn't. The best you'll get is norovirus or flu. Don't touch it.
Exactly. Or herpes.
And there's Claire in for Highland Paranormal. We were up there 2 weeks ago.
That's right, yeah.
Weekend passed, and we met up with Liam, and Claire was there as well. Evening, Claire Doll. And the other thing you hear a lot is, no doubt you've heard it as well, but Greyfriars Bobby, that the dog's buried inside the cut card.
Yeah. It's because the stone there. Yeah, I mean, that stone wasn't put there till 1981. The reason that the memorial stone is put there is because when Edinburgh started getting all the high-rise tenements, the children who used to have pets, pets were becoming more popular in the 1950s, 60s. So if their pet died, they didn't have a garden to go bury their pet in. So what they would do is they would take the collar or their pet bowl and they would take it to Greyfriars because the story of Greyfriars Bobby. So even before the memorial stone was put there, when you go in, there was always the children of Edinburgh would put their dog's toys or their cat's toys in that bit because it was as close, and there was nothing there. It was like a garden. So that's why, that was one of the main driving forces behind why the stone was put there. But no, the dog isn't there because it'd be illegal to bury an animal in a Scottish kirkyard. It's against the law because dogs don't have, or animals don't have souls. So no, the dog isn't there.
Am I right in saying his owner's buried there?
We don't have a burial record for a John Gray 7 years either side of when he allegedly died.
Because I have heard the stories, never had it confirmed that He was buried there.
Through the research I have done over the years, basically, Eleanor Atkinson, that wrote the story in 1911, she was an American lady who never left the USA. She never left her home state of Indiana. She wrote Greyfriars Bobby after speaking to loads of Scottish guys who went across to work in the States. That's the only time, but the only time she could speak to the Scots was after they were finished work. So they were in a pub. Eleanor Atkinson wrote the story to sell a novel. She didn't write it for a little pamphlet or an informational booklet. She wrote a novel to sell. She wanted to write a bestseller. That's why the whole point of writing a book. 1911. Nobody really gave two shits about stray dogs in 1911. We're about to go through the First World War. It was a recession. People didn't care about stray dogs. Why would they want to read a book about a stray dog? What was so special about the stray dog? Yeah, it got fed in the graveyard. Nobody cared. However, this poor dog's heartbroken because its owner was buried and it's upset for its owner. Bang. You pull on the heartstrings, you've got a bestseller. The dog was real. Let's face it, we know the dog was real. There's enough documentation to say the dog was real. Again, how many dogs there was, that's debatable. There is no way a Skye Terrier lasted 14 years sleeping rough in a Scottish graveyard. I don't care what you say. Even Skye Terrier breeders will tell you there's no way they would have lasted 14 years. Not a chance. There's a lot of discrepancies between the original drawings of the dog and then later photographs. There is photographs in existence of the dog with the Trail family, who used to own the restaurant just up the road where the dog used to get fed. There's discrepancies between written documentation and life drawings and in the later photographs between colour and size of the dog and even look of the dog. This is where the differences between the Skye Terrier and the Diamond comes from, the Diamond dog. The statues and the two statues and the later drawings, that's not a Skye Terrier. Whereas the original story that was written and the early drawings show it as a Skye Terrier. Now that leads you to believe clearly there was two dogs. The length of time and the fact there were so many differences. People didn't have internet to go check what kind of dog it was at the time. If it was roughly the same colour and the same size, they're not going to argue. They just go see this dog who's getting fed in the graveyard, who likes to stay in the graveyard.
It looks the exact same.
People. I mean, he was an attraction, but people didn't go see him every day. The only people that were around him every day was James Brown, not the singer. James Brown was the sexton of Greyfriars at the time. He was around every day, which we believe it was possibly him that brought the master into it, if it wasn't Eleanor to sell the book. And the Trail family, but again, they were making money off people, and so was James Brown. Because he would show them around the graveyard. He was kind of like a tour guide, and because he was a sexton. And they would say at the end, "Oh, thank you for your time, sir. Here's something for yourself, and here's something for your little friend." James Brown was playing what can I do? Oh, his master's died, and I've got to look after him now. This little dog's yapping, At the end of the day, the dog wouldn't smell his master. I mean, the body starts to decompose an hour after death. Even if his master was in Greyfriars, he wouldn't be able to smell him through the ground. He wouldn't know where he was. No. You know what I mean? And the people can't even decide on his job. The original job that Eleanor Atkinson wrote for John Gray was he was a shepherd. He came down to Edinburgh. And he wasn't a night's watchman. Night's watchmen were not trusted or used in the 1850s. Night's watchmen were used in the 1820s when night's watchmen, even at the time, weren't trusted. They were paid to look after the loved one's grave. A night's watchman is not a policeman. And people, again, can't differentiate between the police officers. So some say he's a policeman, other people say he was a night's watchman. Night's watchmen were paid by the families to look after the family's grave of a loved one. But they would just get drunk, and then the grave robbers would come along and then pay them triple what the family was to turn a blind eye. What do they care? So they weren't trusted. So night's watchmen were not used in the 1850s, 1860s, or 1870s. Again, it's just research. People need to look into that and research it. All the answers are there. It's all there. But no, the dog was real. The dog was very real. But I think it was very, very much embellished. One, to sell a book, and two, to basically make money. The dog was there to make money for the two people, and three people if you include Eleanor. Yeah.
It's a shame, really, because you've been doing this a long time, 19 years, and you spoke to a lot of people, tourist-wise, over down through the years and what have you. Has anybody ever turned round to you? Because you've got the story of the Mackenzie Poltergeist, the Black Mausoleum, Greyfriars Bobby. Has anybody ever turned around to you and say, "Oh, well, you're destroying the image, you're destroying the legend, or my,
couldn't care less. I couldn't care less if I'm destroying an image for them. It's like them being offended. Then being offended is a personal opinion. It's not a statutory right. If you're offended by it, then that's your problem. It's not mine. I'm not going to lie to appease somebody. If they ask me being somebody who studied it and researched properly, then I'll tell them what I've found. I mean, there is time, obviously, if we get somebody with learning difficulties or something like that, or autistic or something like that, who telling them would be of no benefit whatsoever. Then I will tell them that the dog's there, or the master's down there and stuff like that. It's an individual, but if it's a normal person, no, I will tell them the truth. Whether they're offended by that or take offence to it, or at the end of the day, they're still going to walk away believing what they want to believe, no matter if what I tell them. So
No, 100%. I mean, my answer would be, if somebody says that to me, so I would rather the true history, the true story.
The true history, I've always said the true history is sometimes more terrifying than the made-up story. Yeah, absolutely. It's more interesting. It's more interesting. It's real history. It's real. It
happened. As I say, I would rather they learned what actually went down, as opposed to what 4 or 5 monkeys on Facebook. Or blah blah blah. This is what happened. But I mean, they say Greyfriars has got the reputation of the most haunted kirkyard in the world.
Yep.
And I'm not want to destroy that reputation. We love Greyfriars, but I've always found Greyfriars to be quite welcoming. I'm not talking about the prison. I'm talking about the yard itself.
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, graveyards, in general, don't tend to be haunted. The tradition with graveyards is the graveyards are only supposed to have one ghost, and that is the last person to be buried there is the sort of the keeper of the city of the dead. Yeah, it's their job to look after all the residents. So graveyards don't tend to be haunted. That's why I've never understood a lot of ghost teams going to graveyards. People are dead when they get there. It doesn't make any sense. But the difference is with the prison area, with the people who were held there and ultimately died there, that's what makes it slightly different. And that ground wasn't consecrated until after that atrocity happened. So, it's a kind of in between. It was unconsecrated, then it was consecrated and brought in as part of the south yard of the graveyard. So, but at that time they were kept there. It wasn't. So that's what makes it slightly different. But yeah, graveyards don't tend to be haunted.
Anytime, and I've said to wee Eileen for Phantom Seeker, she totally agreed with me. Anytime you walk into Greyfriars, it's just like stepping back in time. Even though Greyfriars sits on one of the sort of main routes in and out of the city, basically, and you're literally 5 minutes from the city centre. When you step into it, you could be easily back in the 16th, 17th century. And the other feeling I've always had in Greyfriars, and I want to know if you get this feeling, because obviously you've been there a hell of a lot, you always just feel like there's people standing around watching you.
I mean, usually there is. Usually there is, but it's that bloody... Usually, they're just watching you to ask you where Lord Voldemort's buried, usually. I mean... It's just because, it's real history. It's very much, the layout is very much unchanged. And there's been burials on the grounds going back to the 1400s, so you are walking on a city of the dead. There's up to 750,000 bodies in that place. Everywhere you walk, there's somebody under your feet, whether it's on the paths or even certainly under the grass. But even the paths, under the paths, even in my office at the main gates, there's remains under the gate. Even under the main gate, the King's Tailor the tomb was moved to put the main gate in. His body's still there.
Mm-hmm.
So there is literally, it is a human lasagna. There is people all over it.
I've never heard that expression before. A human lasagna.
I should have copyrighted it. I first started using it. I think it was
one thing. I mean, things. Of all the times we've been to Greyfriars, met up with you personally as well. there's something that's kind of puzzled me down the bottom of the yard, going down towards the old gate. There's a big patch of the grass that there's no headstones on at all. It's bare. Any idea?
Yep.
Why
That's
that
the
is?
pit. It's the triangle piece of ground. That's the pit. That was where the first burials were brought in the 1563 from the St Giles graveyard, because obviously that was the whole reason why Greyfriars, the land of the monastery. Right, let's just go back in time. Greyfriars gets its name from the Franciscan monastery that was on the site, basically at the bottom of the graveyard now with the grass market. That was where the Franciscan monastery was, of the Greyfriars. There was Greyfriars, there was Blackfriars, there was also Whitefriars. The Blackfriars are Dominican monks, and the Greyfriars were Franciscan monks. It was their land from the sort of mid-1400s right through the 1500s. So in basically by the middle of 1500s, we'd already sacked the monastery several times, through the Reformations and all that stuff. We'd sack the monasteries, they'd rebuild it, they'd sack it again, they'd rebuild it, we'd smash it again. Eventually they just abandoned it. In all their land, which Greyfriars is now, that was the monks, that was their gardens. They were self-sufficient monks. They grew all their own herbs, they grew their own, they had orchards. They helped the community. They were very well loved, actually. They lived on very basic things. They didn't wear shoes, they just grey robes. That was why they got called Greyfriars. So it was all their land. The only burial ground in Edinburgh at that point, centre of Edinburgh, was St Giles, around the back of St Giles, that everybody thinks John Knox is there. There's the plaque on the ground about John Knox. Indeed, he was there. He was buried there. He's not there anymore, though. So when people are going up, spitting and, flipping off his grave, which seems to be a new thing from some people, women are standing there giving him the finger. Knock yourself out, because he's not there. They were all scooped up because they were coming out the ground because it was overflowing. And that's why they were all dug up from St Giles and then brought to Greyfriars, because Mary Queen of Scots gave the land of the Greyfriars Monastery to the people of Edinburgh in 1563 to be used as a burial ground. Now, the church wasn't founded until it wasn't opened until 1620. So when people, again, I've heard guides tell people this, Mary Queen of Scots gifted the church and the grounds to the people of Edinburgh. Shite. If she did, she would now be called Saint Mary Queen of Scots, because she'd have to have come back from the fucking dead to give the people of Edinburgh Greyfriars Church, because it wasn't founded until 1620. There is a plaque on the church in Greyfriars, on the wall above it says 1614. That is from a tomb, that's not from the church. Plus, that part of the church wasn't built even at that time, because that's new Greyfriars. That didn't exist then either. The original Greyfriars Church was back and it had a tower towards the Flodden Wall. So once all the bodies were bagged and tagged from St Giles, they were brought from St Giles on a cart. They weren't, they weren't spread out. They weren't documented. They were just dug up. They were then thrown in the ground, which is now that triangle piece. All the criminals who were executed, like Covenanters, any criminals, because they'd lost their head or their hands, or they were all dumped in that bit down there in the pit, which is now the pit, that triangle bit. Hence why the Martyrs Monument is just at the side of it. That's why the Martyrs Monument's there, because there's a lot of Covenanters who were executed in the Grassmarket, and other places were just thrown in the pit. There's possibly up to tens of thousands of bodies in that triangle alone. Again, why it's so deep. I mean, you're talking about 32 feet deep now. That originally, from the etchings of Greyfriars from the early 1600s, before the church was even built, the etchings show it as a slight incline up, a slight slope going up into the vast grounds. Now it's you go up 17 steps, and it's like 30 feet deep. That's because the bones, there's tens of thousands. It's a mass pit for criminals and people who were found guilty of crimes. That's it's
always. I mean, I've wandered in America, and it's always puzzled me, because obviously there's headstones everywhere, and I think, why is that bit of grass? And I keep meaning to ask you, but I keep, forgetting about it. I love Greyfriars. It's very peaceful. It's near a quiet second. I step inside and relax, and the sound of the city disappears. Human lasagna, really. Well, you can't use that one, Laura, because that's James' one. Reminds me of the quote from the Lost Boys. If all the dead people stood up, there'd be one hell of a population. Oh, that's true. There would be one hell. And another story I've heard, no doubt you've heard it as well, is there's two stories about the Covenanters prison. I know a lot of people post about the Covenanters prison and half it's a load of bull crap, you know, about the. I've heard people. I've seen people write stories that prisoners were kept inside the tombs.
Yeah, the cells. Yeah.
And I've seen, you know, people walking around saying, "Well, this is the cells. This is where the prisoners were kept." And you think, no, they weren't. You know, they weren't even there at that time.
No. The first after the prisoners, the Battle of Bothwell Brig was 1679. The first tomb after the prisoners were kept there, it was then consecrated because there was more churches opening up around Edinburgh. The sort of the sort of need for space was kind of diminishing, so they decided they didn't need that much space of the full prison. The full prison originally was from the Flodden Wall beside the gate. It was about 2 football pitches in length. It went over Forest Road, which is now the Bedlam Theatre. The hotel. I can't remember I can't remember the name of the hotel beside the Bedlam Theatre. Great steaks in it though. But that was still part of the prison. So they sold off that extra land and they put a wall down the inside because they didn't need it anymore. All that extra land, it was going to be the south yard, and they retained that stretch, the stretch from the gate. And then what they did is the first monument, the first burials were 1704, which was the Moncriefs down the bottom. And then they built up from there. So no, the ones at the top, they're probably late 1700s, early, I think 1823 is the one right at the gate. So they're like 200 years out almost. Yeah, but I heard that these are the cells.
I've heard that quite a few times. And you think they're tombs, you know,
they're enclosures, or layers. Yeah.
Sarah asked, did Mary Queen of Scots not grant the land to be used in 1562?
1562 would be, 1562, but it wasn't started until 1563. That was when the first sort of burials took place, was 1563, yeah. But yeah, it would have taken time for the paperwork to go through. Yeah, of course. But she passed it, obviously, if she couldn't say on Monday, right, you can have the land, and on Tuesday, get the bodies in. You know, it would take time to sort it all out and stuff like that, the legalities. But yeah, so 1632, 1630, 16. But the church, 1620 for the church.
You've officially put Laura off lasagna. Laura's now off lasagna because of your lasagna. No sales, it was a wild field basically. I'm watching her telly because I want to talk about your podcast as well for you. We wind up. But I mean, the Covenanters prison, we've been in there as well, as you know, and there is a different atmosphere. But I know there's all these documented reports of people being attacked, etc. And you do when you pass through the yard into the Covenanters, you do feel a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if that's partly a kind of mindset because you know the history in there, you know what's happened, so you're expecting something, to happen. But every time we've been in, nothing's happened. What kind of feeling do you get?
It's difficult because I'm about as psychic as a bottle of water,
As a lasagna.
Yeah, I'm just about exactly. I'm just like So it's difficult, but all I know, and I've never seen a ghost in my life, and I'm 47 now, so I ain't going to see one now. Just because I can't see things doesn't mean they don't exist. In my line of work, in my job, you can't have a single mind because I've seen a lot of strange things that I cannot explain. That's why it falls into a phenomenon. We don't have science available to us to prove or disprove what people are feeling or the marks that they get. There's definitely something in there that's not human. But what it is, I don't think we'll ever find out in our lifetime because science hasn't progressed that much. I know Wi-Fi exists, but I can't see it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just because we can't see it, and all these people who are quite happily say, "Oh, there's nothing, the fake." They're just doing it for tourism. They're just doing it for that. Over 3,000 eyewitness accounts since we started documenting it. Nah,
No,
they're not
I
human
mean, what?
scratches either. It looks like they've been done by a cat. You know, and under layers and layers of clothes. We know what's real and what's not real. We've done it that long. And there is unfortunately some people that like to get attention, but there's a lot of stuff we don't make public. So we know what's real and what's not real. And yeah, some people do want attention, and we say thank you very much. We'll add it to the documentation. We're never going to turn around and say, well, that's just rubbish. We do get a lot of photographs of orbs that can be explained, and pareidolia,
Mhm.
from the dampness in the vaults or stuff like that. But we've done it that long. We know what's real, but people cannot scratch themselves under 5 layers of, and people get knocked out. They don't faint. They get knocked out cold by something. That's not normal.
I've got a theory. I think I spoke to you about this before. About it. Laws want to know, how do you remember every day that coincides with certain aspects? I'm in awe. Don't get me wrong. You ask me anything about Derry Girls. Derry Girls. That's a program.
Not all the time. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember what I did yesterday for some reason, but I think because I've talked about it that much and I've researched that much, and there's a lot of dates that come up. But sometimes I do get messed up with exact dates. Some of the guides do as well. But it's because I think just because I've been doing it that long, it's it's just like being in the army with your army number, or you get your army number. It's etched in your brain. Certain things. But yeah, I mean stuff like that. But it's like the instance just there a second ago with the 16. 16.
Mhm.
15, 63, 62. There will be some slight variance again from different, thingies, but generally, yeah, dates, because they're important as well. Because if it is important, it's something you've researched. There's no reason for you not to know the dates. If you've read about it that much, it just becomes part of the actual story. Yeah,
It's ingrained in your brain now. Exactly.
Yeah.
If you do something long enough,
Yes.
if you. Craig saying Sandy Bell's pub is close to the centre of the original
Yeah.
prison. Always wanted to investigate it.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, Sandy Bell's, because it goes right across there. Yeah.
I mean,
See what I mean? I can't remember the name of the bloody hotel. So yeah.
But I told you, if you do something long enough, on a daily basis, then it does become ingrained in your brain. I mean, I'll give you an example of me. It's totally unparanormal related, but I lived in Edinburgh for 2 years solid, every 5-6 days a week, and I got to know every wee side street when I was driving the trucks, and people would say, anybody who's going to Edinburgh would say, right, how do I get to such and such? And they would ask me the street names. I said, well, I don't know the street names, but I can tell you what way to drive. I didn't have a clue. I knew Lothian Road, Princes Street, that kind of thing. But there's a load of wee side streets, and I couldn't tell you any names, but I know exactly how to get from A to B to C kind of thing. So I would, it does, you do forget things every now and again, but you've been doing it 19 years, you know what I mean? And, if you're doing the same thing, it's in there, and as his course says, it's ingrained in your brain. But just before we move on to your podcast, but my theory, I think I've told you this before, I know about the Covenanters.
I've always said that. I mean, I totally agree with you. The people that think it's, again, that's going back to the George Mackenzie thing. Jan has never said it was George Mackenzie. That is all public speculation. Again, people don't realise that in the Mackenzie mausoleum, there's 11 Mackenzies in that mausoleum. There's not just him. And there's another 18 burials in there that's not Mackenzie's. There's not just one coffin in there. There's 4 coffins, and then the rest of them underneath. So again, people just presume that because the homeless guy broke into the Mackenzie mausoleum, and then Sonny Devlin in 2003, when he was kicking the skull about, it must have been George Mackenzie's coffin. It must be George Mackenzie. I can't get into that, but no, it's the haunting and the scratches are not. It is not George Mackenzie after death. I don't know. It's not the Lord Advocate running about scratching people up. I can 100% say his coffin is untouched. Untouched.
Well, I'll tell you a funny wee story before we quickly touch with your podcast. I'll tell you his name after we come off. There's an individual. He just started getting into paranormal about 3-4 months ago. Sarah Lord be able to tell me better. But a couple of months ago, he was at Loudon-Kirk with a small group of people. And Loudon-Kirk's a special place for us. Obviously, Sarah and I got married there last year, but we've been there for 4 years. But this monkey decided to give me a Ouija board. And Loudon-Kirk's a totally peaceful location. There's nothing negative, bad, whatever there. He decided to give me a Ouija board and try and offload what he called a dark spirit, a negative spirit. So it's literally 10 minutes first. So Laura and I went there, and this individual, me, had some words, shall we say. But he backed down, and we did a wee small investigation. And so the folk that was with him, there was a woman with him, and they were saying to me, "Oh, have you been to Greyfriars and stuff, the Mackenzie Poltergeist?" And so I didn't give them the full story, because I don't know the full story, but I gave them a kind of rough idea, about who he was and what have you. And the next day they did a live, and this woman was on saying that Sir George Mackenzie was in her kitchen in her flat.
That one about the cup of tea. Yeah, you come round for tea and stuff like that, wasn't it?
No, this was a different one.
That's a different one. My God.
The cup of tea, that's going back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. No, this is just recent. This is just 2 or 3 months ago. This woman started to claim that Sir George Mackenzie was in her house. And so her and this guy went to a chapel the following day, and they got a lovely wee bottle of holy water. It's beautiful, a white bottle with blue writing, beautiful. And a wee prayer book kind of thing off the priest. And this guy was going around her flat, throwing the water about, telling him to be gone. And George Mackenzie left.
Did he? Maybe they tried like a sort of exorcism to kind of raise their spirits there.
The thing that got me with that, Jamie, was people were believing this. They turned up in a flat in Kilmarnock.
That's the unfortunate thing about online, is it can be a great tool for certain things, but there's just so much fucking nonsense and people take it as fact. And when in fact, and then the real story comes on and people try and explain the truth, people are just not interested. They're just, because that's not what they read. It's a daily battle for me. It is a daily battle for me. But yeah, when people start telling me that I need to go research, that's what really fucks me off, and that's what really, really gets my gears up. People say, "Oh, ignore it, rise above it, just ignore it." But when people are tagging me and shit, and I can't help but look at. I don't go out looking for it. It gets brought to my attention, and like I said, it's not a part-time hobby for me. This is my daily work, and it affects my daily job. With people spreading lies and nonsense about it does affect my daily work, and my job. So
you can understand it. It is easy for people to turn around and say, "Oh, just ignore it, Jamie, it'll go away." But if you're passionate about something and it's bang, bang, bang every day, then you can't ignore it. You can maybe ignore the odd idiot, now and again. But
then I come across as, and I don't want to come across as that guy who has to know everything. Like I said at the start, I'm not claiming that, but certainly about, Greyfriars and the vaults, I fucking do. I do, and I know I do. I've not spent the last, best part of my life researching it just to not know what I'm doing. It's my job to know what I'm talking about. So I do.
Exactly.
But I don't want to come across as arrogant, because I'm not arrogant. I just don't like them spreading lies about my daily job, You're
not arrogant, you're passionate.
Yeah, exactly.
About what you do, and unfortunately, sometimes people, mistake arrogance for passion. But even when we've been way in person in the yard, wherever, and you're talking, you can hear the passion. You can say,
of course.
If you put yourself next to a sort of normal tour guide, no offense to tour guides again, but and you listen to your version and listen to their version, it's chalk and cheese.
Absolutely, because I love what I do, and I don't see it as a job. I feel privileged and honoured to be able to take people around Greyfriars and into the vaults and into the prison area and talk about these real people, and talk about the residents, because I care so much about what I do. You have to, but I don't see it as work. I see it as an absolute privilege to be able to do that, to be in a position to do that for people and tell them the truth about it. And yeah, it isn't a hobby for me. It's not a job because I need the money. It's because I love doing what I do, and I choose to research the residents. It's not because I have to. It's because I want to, and I want to learn more about my place of work, which I have.
If some people find the truth boring, then that's their problem.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like I said. If they find it boring, that's up to them. Like being offended, that's their choice. Fuck them. Basically, I'm not going to try and see them.
No, you're not going to try and tell lies just so they'll go away with a smile on their face. You say, well,
no, absolutely not.
These are the facts. This is what happened. And say, oh, well, it's boring. I'm away. No blood and guts and all that. You say, well, do you know what? I'm telling you that what happened, and these people. I mean, at the end of the day, these people deserve to be remembered. George Mackenzie, deserves to be remembered for the man he was, not for the man that people are making.
He's perceived. Yeah, absolutely. The real George Mackenzie. Yeah.
And I'm more scared of living than the dead, especially when you hear rubbish with that. Yeah, the history of Greyfriars is interesting enough without all that shite.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Laura says, where is it? There's
it's actually
an abortion bucket.
There's actually a great quote that I love. It was by Des Brogan, who owns Mercat Tours, actually, who says that history is a damn good, is a great story. It just needs a damn good telling. And he's absolutely right. If you've got somebody who's passionate about what they do, it shouldn't matter if you shouldn't need to embellish things to get people's reaction, because you should be captive enough to understand that history and bring it over as a great story, because it is. Real history is a proper story, and without history, there's no ghosts. Without having to make stuff up to make it interesting, you shouldn't have to, because it's real history, real people and real movements, real stuff that happened. And it is, and I do love that quote from Des. I always have done. It just needs a good telling. And if you've got somebody that can tell you that history and captivate the person listening, that's what it's about. You shouldn't need to make it scary. Again, though, we get asked every day, what's the scariest tour? There's no such thing. Everybody is different. Like the best, what's the best tour? There is no best. Or if you see somebody, oh, that's the best tour to do, that's just their opinion. Everybody is different. It's a personal feeling. There's no such thing as the best food. There's no such thing as the best music. Everybody's different. Everybody will tell you different. So to actually claim that that's the best or that's the scariest tour, that's just your opinion. Somebody might go on that tour and say, that was utter shite, but they told me it was the best. You can't do that. So anybody advertising a terrifying tour, that's a big heavy lifting you're doing there. Because everybody's different. That's why we won't, and I won't ever say that's the best or that's, because there's no such thing. No such thing at all. No. We don't go out of our way to scare people.
To me, a tour should be, especially with Greyfriars and that, to learn the history. Everybody likes a wee bit of spookiness and scary. Everybody.
Yeah.
But to me, 90% of your tour should be informative. Should be that you learn the history of the place. If you get a wee jump or a wee fright along the way,
absolutely. But it should be natural. It should be, And at the end of the day, what you believe and what you don't believe, we don't need to make shit up or do that, because at the end of the day, when we go into that prison, 82% of people who go in there get fucked up by a dead person. We don't have to do anything. We've got a resident poltergeist that loves to interact with people. That's not a George Mackenzie.
He'll be. Have you ever? One last question before we talk about your podcast. Stuart says Sir George Mackenzie never once got his hand bloody. He was a gentleman, a poet, and a very intelligent man. He had a good spirit.
Absolutely.
It's not George Mackenzie who's scratching people.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Has anybody ever suggested that whoever it is in the prison might actually be female? And
there's nothing. Absolutely. We just don't know. I mean, I think there was a lot of investigations done prior 2007. Like, we were a part of Ghostfest and stuff like that, where we had Kieran O'Keefe and stuff like that. And I used to do work with Richard Felix. We used to have groups over to do investigations before they were banned. We had various different outcomes and names, but never once was George Mackenzie's name brought up in any research or any investigation. Not once. Which, again, if it was anything to do with anybody, it would probably be a prisoner who was kept there against his will. That was who it would be. It certainly wouldn't be the Lord Advocate, because absolutely not.
It's somebody where a score to settle, be it, I don't know if that's the right saying or not.
Something that's negative energy. That's the most common thing for a poltergeist is obviously, energy. But again, I don't believe it's a poltergeist. Maybe at the start, Jan called it a poltergeist. It's not a poltergeist. It's not got an epicenter. One person that a poltergeist. I've studied poltergeists a lot over the years. From Enfield to Borley to obviously the Amityville, which was fake. But going back to the Bell Witch, not the Blair Witch, the Bell Witch in Wisconsin, with the Bell family, Betsy Bell. They've all had one. Even the movie Poltergeist all had it in common was one epicenter that the poltergeist feeds from. The energy, whether it be a little girl or through even Carrie with her telekinetic energy. This doesn't have that. So for that alone, I don't believe it's a poltergeist. I don't know what it is. I'm not a parapsychologist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a professional in that. That's way beyond me. But it's definitely not human. That's all I can say.
My theory is, it's one of the former guards.
Yeah,
it could well be. That's my theory. But that's just that's just a theory. It could be a former guard, could be a prisoner. Who knows? Maybe one day
we just don't.
We'll find out. We don't know. But before we wind up, you're doing I want to find out I want to punt your podcast basically. You're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
I listened to 2 episodes, which were very good.
Absolutely. I was trusted to co-present a podcast. Somebody actually trusted me to rather than have a podcast, it's just beep 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 beep. Yep, great. Beep 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 beep. Just blacking out. I'm quite well behaved on it. It's really good. It's something different. Usually, during the podcast, I've always been the one that's getting interviewed kind of thing. I've never actually presented one, so it's interesting. And the first 2 episodes are about me. Well, the Mackenzie Poltergeist, and then Greyfriars itself was the latest one released just on Sunday there. But we're going to have a lot of people we're talking to, a lot of different people like Lenny Lowe from the Witch Trial Museum. Such an interesting person. There's nothing he doesn't know about witchcraft in Scotland and the witch trials. He has a vast amount of knowledge about it. He has the museum in Leven for the witchcraft, the Scottish Witch Trial Museum, which is so interesting. And listen, I could listen to Lenny all day. Absolutely amazing. So we've got him coming up on an interview.
We had him on a couple of years ago. We had Lenny on the show.
Yeah. Oh, he's brilliant. He's such a really nice guy. He was also in Men in Kilts with me as well. Episode 4 with Sam Hewen and Graham McTavish. We've got the president of the Psychical Research Society down in London. We just done that. Caroline, who we interviewed. We've got Jan. We've got to do an interview with Jan, my boss. So it's a vast amount of people. We're going to be talking to. So it's something different. And it's natural. It's all natural. It's Jackie and Liz. Yeah, absolutely. It's different. So far, people have said they've enjoyed it.
I've listened to both episodes. The only thing I found weird was not being able to see you. That might sound stupid. I'm used to,
It's weird because this is the first. I was just thinking that before I came on. Is usually for a podcast, it's recorded video, but it's only the audio it's used. Whereas this is the first live I've done in about 6 years. Actually, live at the time, the video. So this is going back new now. Even TV stuff, it's all pre-recorded. Because I've done a few TV, like there's one just landed a couple of days ago, was the Danny McCaskill one that I was doing with him in the vaults. That was interesting. That's just come out on YouTube, and I can now talk about it. I think it's due to come out. Was the Real Housewives of Atlanta. That was filmed. I'm going to be in an episode of that coming up when they were across.
You're not wearing a dress, are you?
Well, you just have to wait and see. I might be naked. I'm featuring that. So I'm looking forward to that being broadcast. That was different. You don't expect me to turn up on that show. So I've done quite a few things recently. It's been good. But the Paranormal Pack podcast. We're on obviously Apple. We're on. I'm now, I believe, we're on Amazon as well. and we're on Spotify. So if you search for the Paranormal Pack podcast, or get it on my page, the links are there, or on Facebook. We've got the Facebook page as well, the Paranormal Pack podcast. Give it a listen. It's really laid back, and we like having a laugh and stuff, and it's good. It's different, which is nice.
But actually, I posted it on our page yesterday, I think, as well.
Perfect.
I think it was yesterday there. It's on the page. But no, it's good just to sit back and have a laugh. I just found it weird because we can't see you. I did a radio thing a few years ago now. I was asked to do a radio show in America, and my big claim to fame. And that was weird, because I was sitting on the computer and I couldn't see anybody. I could hear them, but all I could see was, the squiggly lines you get. That's my tech knowledge coming out. I can't
remember the name of that. Yeah, it's the sound waves. There is a problem.
The sound wave can, and I was sitting there and they'll say, right, are you ready to go? And that, I said, aye, and I found that really, really weird. But I mean, I've listened to both the episodes so far, and I'll keep listening to them because they're quite interesting. But I think we'll wind it up there now, young man. So you just want to summarise about the Black Mausoleum quickly before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. So just the most important thing is this is not the Black Mausoleum. Never has been. People have never had access to the Mackenzie Mausoleum. Not the Black Mausoleum. The Leo Black Mausoleum is this, inside the Covenanters prison area, where since 1998, people have been getting fucked up and scratched and attacked and interacted with by something they cannot see. This is the Black Mausoleum, pretty much.
And am I right in saying that second about the Black Mausoleum is the resting place of the Dundas family?
The Dundas, the Fingask, yes. The Dundas, David Dundas of Fingask, that's their family mausoleum. No connection to the Mackenzies. No connection whatsoever. It was over 100 and odd years after he died. There is no connection. We don't know. It could purely be coincidental that incidences happened around that mausoleum a week after the Mackenzie mausoleum was disturbed in 1998. We don't know. Probably is coincidence. It may have nothing to do with it at all. But Jan, like I said, had to call it something for the book, and he believes that was the starting moment, was the Mackenzie mausoleum being disturbed. So that's why he called it the Mackenzie Poltergeist for his book, The Ghost That Haunted Itself, which is a great book.
It's a really good book. Well, it's an absolutely brilliant, lovely catch up, Jamie. Take care, Gaff, and speak to you tomorrow. Thank you, dear. Great live, lads. Proud to see you again, Jamie. Maybe next time we visit, Laura will get the book you promised her.
Absolutely. What book did I promise her?
I've got no idea.
I've got no idea.
Promise her a book. You need to take that up with Laura. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me know. Just to repeat what Jamie said, the Black Mausoleum is not the Mackenzie tomb. So I'm saying this to all the people out there that will watch this, that will post up on Facebook with the words Black Mausoleum and a picture of George Mackenzie's tomb. Stop doing it because it's wrong.
Stop it.
You're wrong.
It's wrong. It's misinformation. The Mackenzie mausoleum has never been. Yeah, the public have never had access to that mausoleum ever, unless they've broken in. So yeah.
But if you want to find out the real truth, contact Jamie himself.
Just speak to me. Yeah. I'll talk to anybody about it. If somebody wants the truth, message me. It's what I do daily. It's my job. I will talk to you. I'm never going to tell everybody, just go bloody research. If you want the real story, and that's what annoys me about these big production companies. Fair enough, some of them do, like the Hauntings TV series. There is a lot of big companies that do get hold of us because they know that we've got the documentation for it, because we are the ones that have the primary sources. But ones like that, I mean, they just go ahead. They don't even, uncanny. They're the worst for it. They've done the whole Mackenzie Poltergeist. Not once did they contact us. Although I've worked with Evelyn before, and she knew, but none of them contacted us. They just go ahead and rejuvenate the same garbage, the false information, and it's another knock-on effect. It's just contact me or City of the Dead. It'll be me that contacts you back. I'll tell you the story happily because I want the truth to get out there. just an email. That's it. You know, it's so easy. But no, yeah.
It's a lot easier than going digging and stuff. Just talk to Jamie. Laura can't. Craig doesn't know what book. Laura can't remember either. But he did promise a book. I'm out of this, but it's nothing to do with me. This one. You know what I mean?
I can't remember.
So
I'll figure it out.
I'll leave you to work that out yourself. So we're going to wind it up there, folks. Claire will be down soon to see you, Jamie.
Good stuff.
Not us, you. We just, you know.
I've not seen Claire for ages. Yeah, absolutely.
It's all right, Claire. We will not take offence that you come to see Jamie and not us. Don't worry about it. Don't feel bad about it. I'm trying to guilt trip her a wee bit, but I don't think it'll work.
Absolutely. No.
So I hope that's put paid to all the stupid post stories, etc. But go and find this man on Facebook and look up his podcast as well. You will be seeing him again. We're going to be hooking up with him in Edinburgh shortly. But a big thanks to Jamie Christophin. I might pop up sometime as well. I don't know if that's a threat, maybe, or a promise. Don't know.
I don't want money.
I'll keep it on these for a wee second after we come after Jamie. So thanks everybody for watching. Remember, any questions, talk to the man that knows and know they don't know. And thanks for coming in, Jamie. And we shall see you all again. We're investigating Saturday night. Fingers crossed. So take care, folks. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And bye.